Just before we get started this week, I'd like to apologise for my mic quality because I was plagued with mic issues for both episode 3 and 4. I'm not really sure why, so try and enjoy the episodes as much as it does sound like I'm talking through a can with a bit of string attached.
Welcome back to Directorial Disputes, the podcast where we give our unpopular opinions about film and battle it out to decide whether they're deserving of their unpopular label. I'm James.
I'm Josh.
And this week, our unpopular opinion comes back to Josh's corner after a week of absolutely battering me and forcing me to concede last week. He comes this week with his own opinions.
I do, and this week is that Logan is overrated. I'm probably going to regret wording it like that in about 15 minutes, but...
Yes, you are. Yes,
it didn't sound as good if my opinion is Logan is a film I don't like. So I've got to go hard line with it, haven't I?
That's fine, and that's what this is for. This is the point of the podcast. Come on, give your unpopular opinions, and you can rip you to shreds, or you can prove me wrong. Who knows? Maybe you'll get an unexpected.
Something tells me this isn't the one I'm going to turn you around, and I feel like that it could be in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, certainly true.
But this week I don't think as much. We'll see.
True. Now is for the moment where Josh gets to speak uninterrupted for a period of time about why this shouldn't be an unpopular opinion. And I will do the gentlemanly thing. I'm going to mute myself.
Right. So I just want to preface before starting that I watched the noir version of this because I've not seen it before, and I think it definitely added to the experience. That point being, it added more depression to this film. Something it did not need. Because this film was already depressing enough. And I feel like this is where James is going to come in afterwards and say, well, you missed the whole point of the film. It's supposed to be depressing. And while I understand this was supposed to be No Country for Old Men, but with superpowers, to me, this was just, hey, you know that thing you love? Dead now. It's dead. As they repeatedly stomp on its corpse, because this film takes things that the audiences have enjoyed over years, and just said, you know what, just unlucky, everything dies, move on. It's like if James made a superhero film after the first episode where James like do something different. This film does something different, and this is exactly why I disagreed with him. Because this film is what happens, and I really don't like it. I came out of this film really, honestly, depressed. I didn't, and not in a good way. In the sense of, this film did its job, and you should feel sad, because it's a sad film. I came out of this film being like, why do I want to make films? If this is what I should be making, which, from reviews and from what other people said, this is the pinnacle. I'm not sure. I'll just work in Tesco. I'm good. Because I think the main thing that I have to say about this film is it goes for a realistic tone that's downbeat and depressing, because that's the story they want to tell. They want to show that small element of hope in his life, and that's why everything else is so depressing. Okay, I watch this film and go, this is the film that Zack Snyder wants to make. And he's just not that good of a filmmaker to do that. That's another episode, although I want to hope that we both agree the fact that Zack Snyder is a terrible filmmaker. Okay, that's a nod. Okay, we'll get someone else on. We'll do that, that's fine. Starting off, Professor X just needlessly swears. Charles just swears for no reason. Right, the start of the film, when we first see him, he tells Logan to F off. I get that, kind of sets the tone, fair enough. And then you just have a good 5 or 6 needless uses of swearing. I don't want to come across like Mumsnet right now and be like, think of the children! But it didn't really add anything. It was kind of just like, we need a swear word in the script just to make it edgy. And a lot of the time, it felt like a 15-year-old had gone back to their 13-year-old self's fanfiction and went, I'm going to make it better. And then just added in a load of swear words. The fact that all the mutants are dead, okay, obviously that's supposed to that's the film, the point of that. But we don't really ever see what was it right if they didn't want to show that because that's not the story that they want to tell. The fact that they killed them all off with corn syrup is a bit weird, isn't it? If why they didn't just be like, oh, Charles had another migraine and he killed them all, because that's what kind of happened with the X-Men, right? Is that he had a little headache, ended up killing the main ones, and then corn syrup finished the rest off. I'm sorry, what? But that kind of leads me into one of the other points I've got about this is the villains. The villains are terrible in this film. They are paper thin. Right, you're giving me you. I can see you shaking your head over there. When you unmute your mic again, tell me the actual name of the villain. But it's the fact that they have to fall back on the cliche of oh, it's a clone because, and I guess what they kind of the whole point of that is, oh look at it's himself. He's fighting against himself, and that's the whole reason that's why the clones. But when you look at this as the finishing of a trilogy, because they make references to the other films, but also the Wolverine trilogy as a whole. And obviously, everyone's like, oh, Logan's great. They never actually mention the previous two films in the trilogy, because this one now stands on its own. But you could have gone back and been like, oh, actually, it's his brother from the first one. Does anyone remember that he had a brother in the first one? They might have killed... yeah, Sabretooth. I mean, they killed him off in the first X-Men movie. But it's a superhero movie. Bring him back. It's fine. Professor X died in, like, 3 different other X-Men films. Bring him back. Like... But they could have done the whole, like, nature versus nurture thing with his brother, and then you're also wrapping up that story as well, opposed to just being like, oh, it's a clone. The clone did it. Oh, no. Oh, oopsie. He's killed him now, hasn't he? Which is just dumb. I don't like it when... It's a thing that I'm surprised you didn't bring up in your MCU, or just superhero movies in general need to stop, because a lot of those early MCU films went, oh... It's going to be like the dark side of the main hero, where it's the hero, but he's got similar powers. Oh, yeah, and it's just exactly the same in this one. It's just, it's him, but he's got a worse haircut. Ooh, it's just, I don't like it. I really don't. And I've got some reviews here, right? Just to prove that other people, as few and far between as they are, agree with me. I think a lot are kind of basically saying that this film is a rip-off, actually. It's just of the film Shane. It's a western that is almost beat for beat the same as this film. So much to the point that in the film, they watch the film Shane, and the characters talk about how important the film is to this film. Which, there was one review that said that would be like if in Stranger Things someone read a chapter of a Stephen King book out loud, and Winona Ryder talked about how it's just happening to them. It's a bit on the nose, but I guess it's for a general audience necessarily. It's not as much because who's actually seen the film Shane, other than apparently this guy who wrote a review. But I don't know, like it's just a bit. I don't know, it's the villains, again, like I say, paper thin, and very one note, I feel, as well, which I'm assuming you're going to be like, yeah, you're fine with that in other superhero films, though, aren't you? But when everyone says that this film is, like, a masterpiece, it's, like, one of the best superhero films ever made, I kind of just, like, really? They're not, it doesn't... I don't think of this film as a superhero film. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong. I'm already convincing myself of talking down from this, I think, but I don't see where the appeal is. I just see this film and go, that's not why I come to these films. And then especially looking further into it and being like, the villains are one note, it's needlessly edgy. It points it's on the nose with look what we're doing, and then again with the villain thing of just being like, yep, it's just him. I'm gonna stop talking and let you talk now, because I am getting to the point where I'm rambling. But basically, this film, for me, the reason I think that this film is overrated is because it just doesn't do anything for me. The points where people say this film is really good, I can kind of agree to the point of like, yeah, it's a really interesting character piece on Logan, but it definitely has flaws that people don't talk about. So, over to you.
Now. Now, what have I just heard? What have I just heard? My man came into this and said, the film is too emotional, I don't like it. So we're gonna. You've said so many things. To answer your first question, who's the enemy here? The enemy is the government, and that is the best villain in a film, because you know what? It's real. It's real, bro.
No. Hold up. Right, the government. Fair enough. Right, as a metaphor. If you're going
That's
into
no
this
metaphor.
Film, no. As in like the government in general. Right. Fair enough. But that the government needs, as a character, needs a memorable face that you can go, I hate that character. And I'm sat here like, oh, I really don't like him that played a different version of Loki in the show Loki. That it's Richard E. Grant. He's great in everything he's in, but he doesn't have a character here. He's just a blank slate. Unless you're literally expecting me to watch this film and go, oh, his character is genuinely called Mr. Government Man. Like,
Are you saying there can't be a villain that doesn't have a name?
No,
Surely
I'm saying
the villain...
he does have a name, but he's that like forgettable that I don't remember it. And I only watched it like yesterday. I took notes and everything, and I still don't know his name.
I'm gonna say it now, right? Here's we're gonna dismantle this argument. We cannot say that Logan is overrated. Logan is one of 3 in a trilogy, as you said. So we've got X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is the one with the clapped Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
And then we've got the Wolverine,
which is better than people say.
Let's just take out the first half of the name. What happens in that? I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you what happens.
It's an adaptation of a really good run of Wolverine comics. It's that film definitely could be better.
But then we've got Logan, the Wolverine film that everyone remembers, the Wolverine film that grew up with its audience, and that is the best part of it. The first Wolverine film came out in 2009. Out in 2009. X-Men Origins Wolverine came out in 2009. Mm-hmm. Logan came out in 2017. Mm-hmm. That is 8 years for audiences to grow up. And I am one of those audience members. I remember watching Wolverine, and Wolverine is one of my favourite superheroes. That is, you can take note of that, because I said I don't like superhero movies.
Well, I was going to say, obviously, Wolverine, that's not like that was his first film. 2000, I think the first X-Men film came out. So he's been around since then. As Hugh Jackman, anyway. Yeah.
But the first Wolverine.
The first solo Wolverine film, yeah.
Yeah. So it grew up with its audience. Wolverine was my favourite because he's gritty. He's a gritty superhero. None of this perfectly gelled hair. I mean, he's probably got perfectly gelled hair.
Definitely,
but,
yeah.
Not chiseled in every way. Every part of his character isn't chiseled and perfect. He's a gritty character. He doesn't really want to be a superhero, but he is a superhero, and he's taken advantage of, and he's working it out, and he gets angry, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that is great. And I'm so glad that this was the way that Hugh Jackman as Wolverine ended. I'm so glad.
Yeah, but it isn't, though. It isn't, though. I know, not to cut you off, but the only reason I'm now kind of talking myself back from this is because one of my main things was I don't like the fact that this is how his character went out. Like, partly do, but partly also this film specifically is how Hugh Jackman, like, hung up the claws, as it were. Uh-huh. But now it's not, because he's going to be in Deadpool 3, and I think mainly...
Yeah, but we don't count the Deadpool films, especially not after the first one. The first one's the good one, and then past that, I'm sure they're just going to go down the hill. Second one, much worse than
They have
first.
said that they're ignoring
destined
this film.
bad.
They have said that Logan is its own thing, and then Deadpool 3 is going to be its own thing.
They can do that. But just let me enjoy Logan. Logan, I'm so glad that this is how it went out, in theory, ignoring Ryan Reynolds and whatever he's doing to the superhero world. If nothing else, the idea of an aging superhero was something that we hadn't really seen yet. In film, I don't think so. In film, we hadn't had this idea. We were still in the midst of superhero stardom. You've got Iron Man, you've got Superman with his hairy lip, all still in their peak, and suddenly we're discovering this. We're presented with this superhero who's past it and doesn't know what to do. Logan is driving a limo for a job.
Yep.
And it is so refreshing to see something like that. And you can't say the film is nothing if not brave, in that it's, one, incredibly explicit, which I think for anyone else doesn't work. And I know you say you don't like Charles swearing and all of that, but I don't think for any other superhero that there is, we're not talking about Deadpool, that works with this grittiness. And the swearing works so well with Wolverine. Who would you argue it works with?
Well, the Punisher, because that's like his whole thing.
Oh,
Ghost
for
Rider?
Sure.
But you mean like any
we're not
characters?
talking about. We're not. Do not no.
Okay,
no,
not
do not bring Ghost Rider into this.
In general, but like
your heart was already dug, and now you brought Ghost Rider into your argument. Get out.
I'm not saying those films were good. I'm just naming characters, but I kind of get what you mean, and I think when you say like, oh, this film, is really explicit. To an extent, I kind of get why they need to, because it kind of sets the tone. So, like I said, that first bit where he does the swear, that's fine because it sets it. But then the rest of the film kind of just carries on using it, and when it's already kind of set the tone, it feels like they're just doing it to be edgy, and in the limo at the start, there's just a girl that just starts.
Just flashes.
Just flashes. And it's like, does that really need to be there? I'm not.
Right. I'm not saying by any stretch. I'm not saying by any stretch that Logan is a perfect film. It's definitely got its flaws. But I think the running a limo company is fantastic. It's that off the beat. He's past it. He's not. He can't work in a coffee shop.
Right.
You can't have Logan pouring your frappuccino. You can't have Logan going to fetch you a different size jeans. The limo is perfect because it sets the groundwork for this gritty environment where he's still involved and he so wants to back himself and so wants to be the hero, be the mutant that he was. But in this world he can't. We see him get robbed and shot by a shotgun at the beginning. And it's something that he so desperately tries to stop himself engaging with, and eventually does. But it's that sort of deadbeat superhero vibe, which as the film goes on, we discover he's not a deadbeat superhero. He's still got all this life left in it. And I think something else is that the film is grounded in this realism, and it's something that we hadn't again really seen in the mainstream. I think we've touched on Zack Snyder, so we're not really going to talk about Watchmen. But Watchmen is an example. But equally, we've got Kick-Ass, maybe. Kick-Ass is probably the only other environment where we've got this realistic superhero situation. And I think that's something that's obviously now we see it, and you've got TV shows like The Boys, and that is standard.
Yeah.
But I think if nothing else, you've got to realise how much of a brave decision that is. What a brave decision it is to go, let's take X-Men, which up until this point had been fantastical.
In what sense do you mean? As in like
rooted in fantasy. We're in the real world, but you've still got.
As in like you had, I can't think of when they came out, but you had like the time travel one, which I'm gonna say it's the best X-Men film. But you had that sort of stuff going on. Okay, right.
Yeah. But I think equally it's that comic book, nothing can hurt us, we're superheroes, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in Logan, you've got that rooted realism. And I just think that Logan is deserving of this title that it's got. I don't think it's necessarily been given best superhero film title. But I think in a world where we have so many superhero films which are, and I'm going to say it, shit.
Oh.
That's right. We feel strongly about this. We've got so many shit superhero movies that it's nice to feel refreshed and have something different. People know how I feel about the same old approach to superhero movies, and Logan was a film that, in amongst all of that, was brave and stood out from it, and was an example of the fact that how these films not only can be really positive and actually be an enjoyable experience, but can do well. and can do well. The only thing I can say is that I'm sad that hasn't continued. We're 5 years on, and we haven't had any more of that, really.
I mean, if so, well, you're saying it's brave that it's gone in that bold new direction. Then what do you think of the last kind of 45 minutes ish? Could be less than that, actually. I didn't time it. Because it goes from this, it's essentially a character piece all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last, end fight literally feels like it's ripped out of one of the previous X-Men films. For me, that jarring twist is like, oh, right, they put it in there because people are coming to see a Wolverine film. And that's why it's there. But if you're saying that it's gone in this bold new direction and I should be like, oh my god, that's amazing, then why not make it more of a... I'm trying to think of something to, compare it to. If you've got, that sole villain... I've already said I don't like the villains in this film, but, if you've just got the clone, why not have it just be just them two? Just get rid of everyone else, just them two, and have it be, a Jason Bourne-style kind of messy fight, just the two of them. And have it go on for, at what point, just the two of them, not in big set pieces and running through a forest screaming. And that would feel more personal. But instead you've got this big fight that's, again, like I said, straight out of one of the previous ones. And I kind of feel like, they've kind of thrown all of the last, hour and a half, 2 hours away. And we're back to what it used to be.
See, I think that's really interesting, because I would say it's the complete opposite of that. I think... Throughout the whole film, Logan is told that he's not Wolverine anymore. He's not allowed to be Wolverine anymore. Like you say, we see him driving limos. Charles says that, Charles, as much as Charles is trying to convince him that this is their last chance of hope, Logan has got into this mindset where all is doom and gloom, no more mutants. He can't do him anymore. He can't be the hero. We see when the family that they meet, their horses are loose. Logan's prepared to just keep driving because he's sort of that old, pessimistic old man now, and he can't be that hero that helps until Charles convinces him of that, and then it all comes to that sort of swell where Logan gets this moment where, through all of the film, where he's built this relationship with Laura, and has had these experiences where he suddenly is allowed to be a superhero again, and is allowed to be... He might be old, and his bones might creak, and he might be a bit grey, but he's allowed to be that... He's allowed to be Wolverine, and I think that's a lovely moment. I know it feels samey, and I know it feels like, this is just another X-Men fight, but I think in the context of the film, it's a really beautiful moment. I know that sounds horrible in what actually happens, but we've got this, suddenly Logan is Wolverine again, and you get to see, throughout all of this, finally fans get to see this old, rugged Wolverine doing what he does, and we know he does. I think touching on that is that the film also does emotion really well. I think, we've got from the very beginning where Logan is very against doing anything with Laura, blah, 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 until he finds out more about the situation, which the film brings in really well and makes you actually care about it. And it is very graphic in what it shows, really. The scene where you see footage from the cloning facility is quite unpleasant, really, for a superhero film. But I think that all goes hand in hand in making it so effective. And I think it's also balances that really well. It's not... I know you say you came out and you're I'm so depressed. There are moments of the film that are funny. There are moments of the film that are so funny. When I watched it, again, I rewatched it recently for this podcast, and there's a moment right towards the beginning where Laura has come to where they're hiding, to the corn, wherever it is, to the farm, and the bad guys, again, I don't know the names, I'm not going to pretend I know the names. Mr. Bad Guy with Golden Tooth comes to the facility to come get Laura, and he's speaking to Logan and is being really threatening, and Laura just throws a pipe at his head and he gets knocked out. And I laughed out loud. I genuinely laughed out loud. And I know it sounds stupid, but moments like that are what make the later and the latter aspect of the film so much more effective.
Right. Okay. I can see that. I didn't say that this film didn't have any like levity at all, because it does, like you say, like that. But I'm not gonna win this, am I? I'm really not gonna win this. I think for me, as much as I found that story interesting of what he's going through and his relationship with her, it did feel a bit like I said, there's like a trilogy, right? And yet you're having her come in the last film, and that's not this film's fault, I guess. But you're telling a story about like a legacy story, really, and like the passing down the torch, and it's kind of like, oh right, she's in this film. She's here for like 2 hours, and basically his daughter now in it, and it feels a bit rushed in that sense. Whereas in fairness, I'm saying this, but when you look at this film by itself, I guess then that's not really a problem. And it's partly the fact that because this is the third part of a trilogy, and that trilogy itself feels so disjointed, that this kind of just comes out of nowhere.
I certainly think it's well, as much as there are 3 films that all centre around the same character and all almost have the same name. I think it's bold to call it a trilogy. Really, I think it's hard to call it a trilogy when they do feel so disjointed. And Logan, I think, does the right thing in almost dismissing the other 2 films. I think it benefits from that, where otherwise it could have gotten caught up in the issues of the other 2.
Yeah, sort of saying all of this out loud, it kind of makes me realise just how much these films are kind of like the Mad Max films. In that, yeah, they are all connected, yeah, it's all the same character, but at the same time, it's then you don't really reference back to the previous ones, and there's just kind of things that happened to this character. So yeah, I get that. Again, I'm talking myself out of the corner. But I just want to go back to Mr. Government Man and Mr. Goldtooth. That's a strong part of it. The antagonist of a film is really important, and as much as I care about the narrative side of what Logan's doing and Laura and that relationship, you're then coming and being like, oh yeah, the villains are that dude and that guy and a clone of Wolverine.
And I would agree with that. But if you look at Origins, the bad guy is someone we're presented with in the last 10 minutes, and we're supposed to know who it is, and he's got his long samurai arms.
But that's not the main villain of the film.
But it is a villain, and so what you're saying is that sure. I don't know who that is.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds is in that film before that.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in. They have it's Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, and Will.i.am go and break into a thing together. I don't remember. I've not seen that film in ages. But yeah, he's there. He's there for some reason.
Oh Jesus! Right.
But yeah, no.
Maybe let's not talk about that film.
Could you imagine we start next season with that film isn't as bad as everyone said? Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
No, I don't think there's any argument of that. Unless anyone wants to come on, if they've got that opinion, bring it on.
All of the villains in that film were in it before. It's not like he just turns up at the end. He turns up at the end looking like that, sure. And yet, one of the main villains of that film is just a dude, and the only reason he has that emotional impact is because he's been in previous films.
Are you saying that you watch Logan and you don't know who to be angry at?
I'd like him to have a name. I'm like, yeah, it's Richard E. Grant. I need to be annoyed at that man. But it's like, yeah, but
why do you need a name?
I know that what you're saying to me is like, oh, he's the government. But the fact that I can't remember his name, surely the fact that I can't remember any of their names is a sign that they are underdeveloped.
Yeah, but you don't remember his name, but you do remember what he did. I don't remember the name of Stephen Merchant's character.
Yeah, but how is that a good thing? How can you say like, oh yeah, I know what he did, but I don't know his name? Like,
I don't know his name, but surely I remember the points of what make him such a horrendous person. And I don't need to know his name to understand that he's a horrendous character and I should be against him.
I don't know about that.
The same way that I don't know Stephen Merchant's character's name, but I do know that he's a bit of an idiot, a bit of a pushover, and kind of funny.
But surely that means that they're also underdeveloped, because as much as you know kind of what they're like. But you're coming out of this film being like, oh, that guy. Like, you don't.
No, but I can say, the guys who are, cloning children against their will after stealing them from their forcefully impregnated teenage mothers.
Oh, I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
like,
what
I
makes it so
don't need a
bad?
name.
No.
I don't need a name to be angry at this film's antagonist. And I know you talk a lot about the clone and how you go, it's just another version of him.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think that's really well done. I think it's a really nicely done scene, particularly in the house where there's the old switchover. But I don't think I need to know someone's name in order to be or feel any particular way about them. Just because I know Logan's name is Logan doesn't mean it makes it any more effective of the fact that he's aging and that he's struggling with the fact that he's a has-been superhero.
No, I mean, I guess again, this just comes down to like personal kind of thing. But if I come out of a film and I don't really remember someone's name in it, to me that's like, oh, that character is underdeveloped. That character, obviously, I'm like, oh right, he's the villain because he's been doing all of that. But him as a character within himself, it wasn't just him doing that cloning. That was like him and a bunch of other people. But the fact that he's the main antagonist, and I've come out of that being like, yeah, he was doing some bad stuff. Don't remember his name though. To me, that comes across like he just wasn't in it enough, or he didn't do enough.
I will take you back just for a moment. And it's not something I do often. I'll take you back to last week's episode.
Oh, God.
Where my horrendous opinions about Jordan Peele came out.
Mm-hmm. Are you about to ask me what any of their names are?
What do they refer to the alien as?
What do they refer to the alien as?
Yeah. The bad guy. The bad guy of the film.
Alright.
This film that you loved so much. I'm not saying that you have a right to, or you it's understandable that you want to know the bad guys.
I feel the difference there, though, is that the villain in that film was a big donut-shaped space alien that didn't talk.
What's the dad's name in Get Out?
Shut up.
You see, the point. I take your point, and I do understand that there's a desire to want a name to attribute with it, and the fact that we don't know their name might suggest that the characters could be underdeveloped. But I just don't think Logan is underdeveloped in a way that I need to know their names, because I know what they do, and that's enough. The same way that in Get Out, I don't know the dad's name, but I know he does, and I know that it's horrendous. And so this desire for a name for a bad guy, I don't think really affects the film. I don't think if they'd come out and Richard E. Grant is called Kevin, his name is Kevin McDougal,
right.
Kevin McDougal, the bad guy. I don't think if you watch the film and Richard E. Grant was given the name Kevin McDougal and you came out and went, oh, Kevin McDougal, he was a really bad guy, I don't think you'd like the movie anymore.
No, that's funny. At least that would have made me laugh. There we go.
Kevin McDougal is a fantastic name, and if any writers out there need any help with names out there, just give me.
I thought you were going to say if there's any Kevin McDougals out
there. Equally, if you're Kevin McDougal and you're listening, please write in, because my lord, I want to speak to you. Actually, I want to speak to your parents. So yeah, I just think Logan does, or certainly did, so much that was needed at that time for superhero movies, that it has this right to be as lauded as it is. It's certainly the highest scoring. Not that Rotten Tomatoes is the be all and end all of film success, but it certainly has the highest rating on Rotten Tomatoes of the so-called trilogy.
Well, yeah, that's not different.
And I think it's definitely deserving of it.
Okay. I'll say, so my 3 points to wrap this up. I think one of the main reasons is I think it's needlessly edgy in places. The swearing, as much as I'm normally like fine with swearing in a film, I think at points they try and like hammer it to the point where it's just edgy. It feels like it was written by a teenager. A borderline Zack Snyder teenager who who just wants to be like, oh, we've got lots of blood and gore and swearing and nudity for no reason, really. I think the villains are weak. That was the main bulk of this, and apparently I've just been wrong. But I just think the villains are weak. As much as it's the government, Kevin McDougal really needs to needs to leave more of an impact, because I come out of that film and go, yeah, I remember the emotional narrative of that film, and I remember not much else. The villains leave zero impact on me. And again, with the clone thing, I get why they did it, but it's a massive cliche that's overdone. I feel like they could have told a bit more of an interesting story if they brought in another character like him instead of just having him. Do I want to push it as far as saying also that it's kind of disrespectful to the characters? I think that's kind of what you're just going to say.
He's bringing out the bold words. He's bringing out the bold words at the end of the...
I think you're just going to say that's the point, though. It's to be like, oh, you've watched these characters grow and evolve over the last 17 years. Unlucky for you, everything dies. So I think my wrap-up really is I'm too depressed to watch this film. But yeah, like I feel like with a few tweaks and changes, and me with a much mental healthier mindset, I'd love this film.
Like someone backing out of their own argument.
But to me, I just can't. I don't get any enjoyment out of this film. Nothing. As I can go, that's a well-made film. It's really not for me though, because I just don't get any enjoyment out of it. So that's me done.
Fair enough. I would say, again, rounding up with my 3 points, I think, for starters, you've got to give Logan credit for doing something brave and something different in this superhero industry that is oh so the same and oh so repetitive. It was certainly the first mainstream cinematic exploration of aging superheroes, which I think is a super interesting concept, and I'm incredibly surprised it hasn't been explored more. Equally, I think going out with the explicit nature of it, I think as much as it's also brave, and I think some people will be put off by it, I think it certainly suits the nature of the film. I think the film needs that to just give it that extra kick. In the emotional section, I think equally, my second point would probably be the fact that the emotion in this film is certainly something that I don't think I've experienced in another superhero film. I don't think, especially in the length of the film, the amount of connection you get between characters is not something that I've experienced in such a short period. I think the only things that might come close is you speak about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but equally that's done over several films,
of many films,
hours and hours long. And finally, I just think that, don't get me wrong, it's not a walk in the park. It's not a walk in the park, anyway. It's not a light, I want something easy to watch. But I just think that is what makes this film so good. It's a final hurrah. And the emotional rollercoaster that is this film gives Wolverine his proper final hurrah.
I wouldn't have called it a hurrah, really. I don't think it ever gets to the point where, yay! At no point in this film did I go, hey! Like, it was, I'm just like, sad now. And that was it from like all of it. I was like, oh, sad. Like, that's... But again, I think that's where, like, obviously, no, it's not a Sunday afternoon watch. I know that. Going into it, I'm not expecting it to be like the other films. But I think there's other films out there that do this better. Like I compared this to No Country for Old Men. That's the tone it's going for. And yeah, I think I'd rather watch that. And when I go to like, I want to watch a superhero film, I don't go, yeah, I want to watch Logan. Because there's so many other superhero films out there, even ones that do things different than the majority.
I might even go as far as to say that this isn't a superhero film.
But you can't avoid that though. As much as that might be that's completely fair. But you can't then go, oh, it's not a superhero film, but it's a character that's been in those films for 17 years, nearly 2 decades by that point, and then go, it's not a superhero film though.
But would you say, oh, I want to watch a superhero film and then watch Kick-Ass?
Maybe. I've done that before. I know you're giving me a face of I don't believe you, but yeah.
I would say Kick-Ass is the same level of superhero film as Logan is. It's a superhero film that succeeds, or even Chronicle. You know, if you
Yeah,
want to watch a
Chronicle,
superhero
yeah.
film, do you go, I want to watch Chronicle? In reality, the thought that comes to your mind is not Chronicle, Kick-Ass, or Logan. You go, I want to watch Spider-Man. I want to watch Iron Man beat someone up for the 15th time. I want to watch Justice. No, maybe not
But
Justice
my
League.
point there being is that if I go right, I want to watch a superhero film, but not one of the normal ones. To me personally, Chronicle and Kick-Ass are better for that than this. And I know no one is going to agree with me on that.
I think it's certainly an argument, but I'm not sure it's one that you're going to win. Are you conceding today's unpopular opinion?
I'm going to have to, because if not, this episode is going to be so long.
Woo!
And yeah,
it's
right.
2-2, baby! We brought it back. It's been a rough week last week. It was a rough week. I got my ass handed to me, and here we are. We're back level pegging. Oh, we're back on the scoreboard.
And I'm not feeling confident about the next 2 weeks either. I don't know. Maybe I might be able to. Oh, I don't know. Actually, looking at what we've got for the next few weeks.
What we've got planned again next week is a real juicy one. Next week, I think for me is going to come down to how you word it. I think next week is going to be a hard-fought battle. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And I look forward to bringing my. Oh, I think maybe my most touchy unpopular opinion to the table. Oh, how
you really
exciting!
think that's going to be your most touching?
I think
opinion?
it's going to
Really?
upset a lot of people.
I'm surprised.
I think it's going to upset a lot of people. But either way, that's next week. I am still absolutely buzzing off of the win of this.
Rubbing it in.
Josh and I are level pegging on the leaderboards again. In the meantime, if you want to catch up on any previous podcast or stay connected ahead of our future podcasts, follow us on social media. What are our social medias, Josh?
So on Twitter, it's @Disputepod, and on Instagram, it's Directorial_Disputes.
And thank you for listening. I'm about to go and have an absolute party.
I'm going to go and cry in the corner. And by that, I mean I'm just going to put Logan on again. Bye!
Enjoy!